and welcome to Talk Art. I'm Sally RAYN, and I'll be your host as we delve into the world of the artist and the art that's all around us. Talk Art is sponsored by the Silicon Valley Open Studios. During the first 3 weekends in May, hundreds of local artists open our studios to the public. For more information, you can go to the website svos.org. Our guest for Talk Art is Azita Gandjei, and she is a visual storyteller, a fine art photographer, and she's here to demonstrate how she paints with light to create her very dramatic, beautiful photographs. So welcome, Azita.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So tell us a little bit about how you became an artist.
Well, it was just actually by accident that I discovered photography. And it was after the failure of my startup. And so I was just decompressing, taking photos. And as I was taking them, I became so engrossed in it, and I just loved it. And so it just consumed my entire time. And then I had a very good friend who is also a prima ballerina, and she encouraged me to actually just pursue that instead of doing anything else. And I haven't looked back since.
So you create fine art photographs. So tell us a little bit about your subject matter.
Well, I find that I'm the cheapest model to use, so I use myself most of the time. And I like to tell stories because I think that each image, when it tells a story, it really sort of communicates something with the right audience. And as you can see from some of the photos that I have, that in this, there's a portfolio that I created, and it was really about the journey that I went through for my startup. And how it was from the beginning of the journey, the excitement, all the way through to burying it. So it's, yes, it was very therapeutic, and I really
So
enjoyed
you
it.
try to show different emotions in your photos, is that?
Yes,
is that
exactly. And right, exactly.
And so who are some of your influences, would you say?
Well, I really like early cinema, and I was really taken with Man Ray as well. So, and nature, I love nature, so.
Well, we have some photos that I'd like to take a look at, and you can tell us a little bit about the stories. What stories are you trying to tell?
Okay, sure. So this one, this was at the beginning of the journey of, I had left the corporate world, and I was really excited about doing my startup. And so this is kind of showing the innocence and the idealism behind it, and really kind of, really sort of looking and trying to find all my ideals and all my, collect all my thoughts together.
So how do you create that lighting and the layered look to it?
Well, this was actually done with, it was actually in nature, and it was in my garden. And we have so many roses. I just took some rose petals, threw it there, and stuck some in my hair. And it was very bright sun, and so I just took the shot. And the layer that you see over the top is actually something that I use. It's called Mextures. There's one that's called Mextures as a tool, and there's another one that's called Alien Skin. So Alien Skin I love because sometimes it gives this sort of film look, so it makes it look more alive. And so that's the texture that you see on top.
That's beautiful. But that's just one photograph. It's not multiple on top of each other. Oh, very nice.
Right. And then this one is Lost in a Dream. It's or you can even call it a California dream, because it happened as like I was immersed in my startup, and I was kind of feeling that I'm floating in this whirlpool, really, and I wasn't sure where I'm going, and I put all my blood and sweat into it, and so that's what this image is really depicting. Because when you think about California, you think people come here from all over the world to actualize their dreams, but ultimately you give up so much and you sacrifice so much, and hence the red in there.
I like the outside of it. That's really cool.
And actually, this one is I've put another layer on top of it, and it was a layer of apples that I had. So I took a shot of nature apples, and I just juxtaposed it on top of that.
Oh, interesting.
Where I was in the pool, and hence you get the red. And it kind of is symbolism. It's a bit like coming out of paradise too, and the first one's in paradise.
Well, that's interesting. That's still you.
Right, that's still me. And so this one is really talking about how I'm changing form as I'm going through the startup. And I don't, it's not really human form yet, but the startup has really changed me too. And again, there's that theme of the petals there, but the petals are scattered now, what I'd collected.
And you're actually in water.
Yes, I'm actually in water.
Do you work with a photographer when you do this, or is this yourself?
No, this is myself. What I do is I have this gadget that I put on top of my camera, and it's called Cam Ranger, and I set it on a timer and on my phone, and then I'm able to do it. But it's a bit interesting because sometimes I just need to see if I'm in the right position and pose, and the phone could get wet, and or sometimes I leave it on the sun, and then it gets too hot, so the iPhone says, "Oh, it's overheating."
Oh, no.
So,
well, it makes beautiful imagery. Look at that.
Thank you. And this one says, now I'm sort of coming out of this whole experience that I had with the startup, and it's more like I face myself, and it's much more of a soul kind of a realization. And it's taken on more of a human form at this point of the journey.
Still quite abstract, though. Very nice.
And here, it's really this feeling. A part of me is kind of disappearing, and another part is kind of emerging. And yes, I'm sort of looking back. I'm divided about, letting go, even though slowly I'm sort of separating.
So
from
how
my old
did you
self.
create this? Is this in Photoshop that you were using?
Right.
Or?
It's just that you juxtapose the two, and then you just use one of those. When you put it, the layer, you can have many different settings. So it's just one of the settings that works.
It's beautiful.
Thank you. And here is sort of at the end of the journey. I really like this one because it's very still and it looks almost dead, but at the same time there's the greenery and it's alive. So to me, it's symbolic of both life and death, and it's embracing both. And ultimately, I think the realization I came to is that, to live is to really hold everything that's died at the same time simultaneously while grieving it. But I found the joy in it as well.
That one looks very joyful to me, and the way that the body is sort of at the same light level as the background, except for the petals, of course.
Right.
It's kind of blending in. But that one seems joyful to me. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
So now you have a demonstration. We have a model that you're going to do.
I do.
So tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, so I thought about what would be the most interesting part of photography, or what would be the most useful. And to me, light seems to be key.
Right.
And given that storytelling is very important in the arts, and I think that's what kind of distinguishes artists, when they find their own voice. So I thought that it would be interesting to show how light can actually communicate a story and help with the visual storytelling. And there's so many different aspects to light. I decided that I'm only going to focus on the direction. And to make it really simple, I'm only going to use a flashlight.
Okay, let's see what you have.
Okay, and I'm going to use this because flashlight is actually very blue light, very cool light. And so to connect with your audience, it's better to have warm light. So I'm going to try and use this for the most part.
Let's see.
All right. I'm going to now. We have our model, Stephanie. Thank you, Stephanie. So the first one is that I'm standing right in front of the model, and I'm directly behind the camera. And so as you can see, is that this is flat light, as you can see. And with flat light, it's the most natural. It's somewhat similar to daylight. And you can use this when you're trying to say something joyful, happy. They use it in sitcoms, comedy, romantic comedy, things of that sort. And you can see the twinkle in Stephanie's eyes. It helps connect with the audience having that. Now, the next one, I'm going to go at 45-degree angle. And here, what you'll see is that this is a very painterly look, and it casts shadows as more dramatic. And it's it can communicate many different things depending on the pose. But ultimately, it could be used to communicate something very internal, something that's going on emotionally inside. Now we move to 90 degrees, and 90 degrees you get the split sort of appearance. There's the dark and light. It reminds me of Good and Evil from Alfred Hitchcock's, one of his movies. Anyway, so I think that this can be used to, you don't really trust the person fully. They're having some thoughts, shadowy thoughts. And so it's sort of there to, you know, highlight the drama and show that the person isn't necessarily completely trustworthy, depending on the type of expression the person uses. And now we're going to do the, this one is going to be the backlight, where you're going to see the silhouette and not really the person so much. And you don't really connect with the person because the person is not that important. It's really about you communicating a concept or something different about the set. Now, top light, this can be used in, it can cause a lot of, you don't really see the light either. And I mean, you don't see the eyes within the light. And so it's, again, it's sort of casting a villainous character or someone that's not completely trustworthy. It's unsettling in some way. That, and you can position it differently depending on how you want to communicate. And then we have the bottom light. And this one is like, this is called the monster light because, you know, as you can see, it can look a little garish and, and it's good for Halloween. So this is another light that we can use. And the last one that I'm going to show is actually going to be using lace to communicate sort of how to paint a body or using light. So here, I will just shine the light. Let's see. Trying to get that. There we go. So as you can see, by pulling the light back, the flashlight back, you're able to actually see how the pattern can get stronger or weaker, depending on how far back you go or how forward you go. So let's see if we can, it's hard to, there we go. And this can be really fun. You can also do this with a projector and use just stock images to create that kind of a look. And you can put any pattern on it. I just use this lace. I'm not fully getting the effect, but.
So you have some photos that you've taken that use these types of effects. And why don't we take a look at those now and we can talk about the finished product and what they look like. So this one in particular is
this one, yes.
Beautiful.
This one I liked because I really like big cats, and I thought, why not just emulate one? And so this was set up in the backyard, and it was bright light, and that's why you see these shadows cast on the face. So that one, and it was actually very, very difficult to stay in that pose and look really like a predator at the same time.
So was your exposure long for that one, or is it really short?
No, it was very short
Very
because
short.
it was very high.
Yeah, you can see the ripples in the water.
Yeah.
I like that one.
So there's a lot of drama to it. And this one, I call it suspicious. It's like, it's plotting, the person is plotting and they're sort of, they're suspicious and plotting at the same time. And because of the shadow that's cast on the face, you can see there's a lot of drama in there. So there's some introspection, but also sort of looking to make some action.
Yes, I can see that.
And I put the colored one there because I think that the colored one is actually it's softer for some reason. So it's not so, I mean, it's suspicious without so much of the evil plotting, maybe sinister plotting going
The
on.
difference between the two, when I was looking at them, is that your eyes seem so luminous, and the way the light is shining on the side of your eye really just makes it so colorful and beautiful.
Right.
That one I really like.
And then this one is, I would say, is much more in I call it flamingo, but it's really much more in the execution stage of the plotting. So the person has already plotted their revenge, and now they're going to execute. So they put on their mask, so they're sort of looking out.
So where is the light in this situation?
I actually used the flashlight, and I was just playing around with it, so I don't quite remember. I think, but it's the direction is coming from one side, definitely.
And sort of above as well.
Yeah,
so
above, exactly.
casting those shadows.
Yes.
So in the exposure and when you actually print the pictures, do you change what it looks like when you're doing it to add detail or anything like that?
So, yes, I do. I mean, this one I haven't touched so much because the shadows are not so strong, but I like to make the shadows much stronger. So in Photoshop, there's this feature that I love, and I think it's called shadows or something that you can use, and I use that all the time because you can really play with the light and the shadow to create the effect that you want.
Wow.
Now this one, I did use that feature, and so you can see a big difference. Now this one is much more like what's going on inside of her. She's doing the execution of the plotting.
What is she doing?
And yeah, so I think that one's a much more shadowy kind of.
So would you display the two of them together, or would they be separate?
I think that it goes together because it really is like the inner voice versus the exterior mask that the person's wearing. And then this one, even though there's so much shadow put on that, I feel that there's an innocence to this photo. And I'm not quite sure. I haven't figured out how that's kind of come about, but it sort of has this film noir style and quality to it.
I love the light on your eyelids. I think that might add to the innocence, just the sparkles. You have such strong features in your photos. It's beautiful.
Right. So that's kind of showing how shadows can still make a person look rather innocent. And then this one, it was really, I was just exploring, and I used the same laces I'm using here. And I was exploring how to, because we have such bright sunlight in California, how to use that to my advantage. And so I just went out in the morning, and it was really southern exposure, bright sun. And I stuck the lace there, and I just sat in different positions. And I really like the way this one came out because, again, it kind of has this kind of leopard look to it. And it's just like, considering like I'm hungry, I'm looking for something to eat. And I like the way that the green from the shrubbery is kind of playing off the lace. And so you don't really know whether the image, whatever's being cast, if it's just plants or if it's something else.
And it also looks like there's some sort of golden reflection coming up on your face as well.
All right, because that's a lemon tree. So we have that. So I have
Beautiful.
lemon tree. was that, yeah.
Yeah, very nice. I like the silhouette of that one. It's beautiful.
Thank you. And the last one, I want to show sort of a high key where this is kind of almost like a fashion shot or something that even, it's not really about the person at all. It's much more about the lines and the form. So I have a Tibetan Terrier, Zuzu, who we sort of like, she's like a mini me. And so she loves to be in every shot whenever I'm doing these shots. So I just picked her up and yeah, so this is really not about the characters, it's much more about just the shape and the form.
So how did you get the red and then have everything else so very white?
So again, you can use alien skin to do that. So you can actually pull out, there's some feature that you can make it look cinematic. So it just blows out.
Interesting. But the red you could keep.
Yeah, and it keeps the red, which is kind of...
I really like that one. That's very like advertising type.
Yeah, it's
beautiful. So
thank you.
Well, yeah, so your photos are so interesting. Where can people see them? Where can we come and see them in person?
All right, so I'm showing at the Gallery House, and in fact, we're going to have the holiday show coming up soon. So
the Gallery House in Palo Alto.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about how you would show there. What is it like there?
So it's a co-op, and so it's owned by all the artists, and it's really fun because this is my first foray into being an artist, and I've learned a lot from the different artists. It's very supportive, and I really enjoy showing that because you sort of learn about all the different forms of art other than photography, and yeah, and it's nice because a lot of people come. And
right, so it's in Palo Alto on California Avenue.
Yes.
Well, excellent. And do you have any other shows? You're part of the Silicon Valley Open Studios, right?
Yes, yes. So I showed for the first time this year, and I plan to show again next year. So yeah, it's wonderful.
Well, excellent. So tell us a little bit about when you're setting up these photos, shoots, and you're by yourself. Describe what it looks like and how you get ready for it.
Well, it's a huge mess.
Do you have a plan that you start off with?
I do typically have a plan that I start with, but what happens is that I've discovered that I never go, and the good photos are never the ones that I planned for. So I sort of, midway through doing the photos as I planned, I get frustrated and I give up. And I sit there for a few minutes, I sit there for a few minutes, and then after a few minutes, I just start to go with the flow of what would work. And then something happens magically, and it shows the effect that I want. And so...
Something happens magically.
It does.
I think that's about all art is like that, you know. And the frustration part as well, I think, is really key.
Oh, definitely.
To like, so do you have a plan for the emotion that you're going to start with? You had this series of visual storytelling about your startup. Did you plan that out ahead of time as you wanted to show those various emotions?
Yeah, it was in my unconscious. I think that I just gravitated toward that, and I just needed to express it, even though I wasn't sure that that's what I was expressing. But everything just seemed to revolve around certain, like this whole process, and yeah, from going from birth to death kind of thing. And so I just did it, and it completely made sense. So I think there's a lot of times I realize with art, as opposed to, and I've been very logical before, so now I've had to let go of my head and just really focus on my heart, and just go with the flow of whatever I'm feeling, and don't suppress it, and then the art comes out magically.
Well, excellent. So do you have a particular favorite photo that you remember that moment of like capturing whatever it was that you intended?
It's kind of like giving birth in a way. Once I give birth, I get they're gone. So I don't have a particular favorite one, but I do like working with water a lot. So I love working with water, I love the ocean, and I love nature. So those are the key elements.
So when you take the photos in the water, when I first saw your photos, I thought that you had multiple photos, that you'd layered them in Photoshop and blended them, but you actually really just take one photo.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. So how do you visualize that and then
It's actually quite,
execute?
it's simple. I mean, for example, the ones in the pool, I got a kiddie pool and I threw a canvas there into it. And then I just threw some rose petals and then I stuck myself in there and it was cold, but it didn't matter. So, I just experimented and some of them turned out really surprisingly better than I'd expected. So.
Oh, they're beautiful. The ones that are just very abstract to me. They
Right.
look very abstract and the reflections are beautiful. So you take like multiple pictures. You must take many, many pictures and then just
Right.
choose them.
I do. I mean, I just have it on a timer and I say, okay, I'm going to take 50 photos, for example. And so then it just keeps going at certain, every few seconds. And that's how.
So you're in the pool and you're by yourself.
Yeah, I'm
That's
by
pretty
myself. I mean,
amazing.
it's much more comfortable when you're by yourself
Right.
and taking photos.
Of yourself. So you are the photographer, you're the light designer, you're the artist, and you're the subject,
Yes.
the storyteller.
Right.
I think that's a beautiful continuum of like creating art.
Thank you. And it's the cheapest way to do it.
Well, yes, that too. So, do you have any future plans briefly for what you might do next?
I'm not really sure. I just kind of, what I like doing it now is just doing whatever I want to do. And so just whatever comes up. But I do like to get more into videos, and I've done a few videos, and I think that it would be fun to do that as well.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you so much for being part of Talk Art. It's a beautiful work you have.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.